Thanks for listening to Live Forever Young Radio. New research shows serious COVID-19 symptoms can linger long after you test negative for it. In this show, Bob and Rollie discuss a new phenomenon known as post-COVID syndrome. They discuss the long-term health and psychological problems that stem from prolonged COVID-19 symptoms and what you should do if you are suffering as a COVID-19 long hauler. Bob and Rollie identify natural ways to help ease post-COVID symptoms and get you back to living your best life. So sit back, relax, and get ready to live forever young.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Live Forever Young Radio. I am Bob Gilpatrick, and I'm here with Rollie Culp. Rollie, how you doing today?
Good, Bob. How's it going, man?
Great, man. I can see you have your old vintage Tampa Bay Devil Rays cap on.
Got to get ready for the season.
In honor of the season beginning and raising the banner at Tropicana Field for having won the American League pennant last year. Over all the great teams in the American League, like Houston and Toronto and the Yankees.
We got it going on in Tampa Bay.
We made it to the World Series. So season starts pretty soon here.
Yeah,
and
got to pay attention to the Rays this year.
That's it, man. So and today, being that it's here in around the end of the first quarter of 2021,
right?
We're going to talk about post-COVID syndrome.
Yes, that's one of the things that we've actually had a couple people call us about that they're experiencing right now as things are sort of getting back to normal, I guess.
Yeah, and I've also talked to people that I know personally that are still suffering from post-COVID syndrome, even many months later. Mm-hmm. Their memory's still not back, their concentration and focus and their energy is really a big thing. So we're going to talk today about this syndrome and what it is that the symptoms are and also what we can do to make improvements and hopefully eradicate it altogether.
Yeah, I mean, they call it post-COVID syndrome. It's fairly new, and it's like a unique phenomenon because we obviously haven't had anything like COVID go on in over 100 years. And obviously, because just like the virus itself, we're still learning about it. So what a lot of the people see with these COVID syndromes is that sometimes the symptoms can actually persist for months longer, even in people who weren't really affected heavily at first. What it really starts to focus in on over the long term is like lungs, heart, and brain. A lot of those things, the affecting of those things is what's a catalyst for these long-term health problems. So we're gonna get into that.
So the symptoms people are feeling, we talked about fatigue was one of them, but then also headaches and muscle pain. One real common one is loss of smell and taste.
Yeah, that was actually, it's funny. That's what a lot of people said they started noticing at first.
Yeah.
But actually, after time and having it, a lot of people haven't really regained it. These people that have the COVID, they call them long haulers, is actually the term they use to refer to these people with the COVID-19 syndrome. And even these people who've, maybe been rid of it for a while, the actual virus, the symptom of not being able to taste or smell goes on. That's not fun. You can't enjoy food, know?
And the other ones we see also are some people are getting rashes and even hair loss.
Yeah.
And so we'll talk about that a little bit later. But really commonly that we're seeing is people are having depression and anxiety and even PTSD. People are very paranoid, that kind of thing. And we know that because of COVID, about 20% of the population began to see some type of a therapist as a result of the COVID pandemic in general.
Right.
But what we also now know is that about that same percent of people that actually had COVID, ended up also getting a psychiatric diagnosis as a result.
Well, think about it. I mean, if you're one of the people that went through it and maybe was put in intensive care and actually made it out, that's pretty scary. Because at the time, they weren't letting anybody come and visit. They were barely letting many doctors go and see it because they didn't know how to contain it. And so you're stuck in there for maybe on a ventilator for a month, week, and it's pretty traumatic. So that idea of being isolated and being not knowing what was going to happen with your health is something that could stick with you. And that's, I think, another part of the long hauler syndrome. The more psychological part of it is the toll that has happened. And then you've got people who've lost people and couldn't say goodbye, because they wouldn't let them go to the hospital. So even for the remaining survivors that didn't get necessarily COVID or even COVID long haul, it affects the people of the loved ones of the people who passed away because they couldn't say goodbye. So that's very traumatic.
And in addition to that, people are still worried about losing other loved ones that might get COVID and die from it.
Right, and that stress is still there. So that probably would cause long-term anxiety, and then all that the release of all the things dealing with the stress, the cortisol. We've talked about that hormone before in a podcast. We talked about managing stress and anxiety in trying times. We talk about cortisol and how that can actually really make things a lot worse, creating more inflammation and anxiety.
Absolutely. And the inflammation's a big one, and that's why, one of the things that people should do when they go to their doctor, and anyone that's still having, post-COVID, if you're a long hauler, you should definitely let your doctor know about it, go for a visit. And there are certain tests that you want to make sure that you get. So, for example, you want to make sure that you get your vitamin D level checked. There's a lot of studies about vitamin D being very important in the strength of your immune system.
Yeah, I mean, when it first happened, not to cut you off, but when it first happened, remember, we didn't know exactly how to treat it. A lot of the CDC and a lot of really prominent doctors were saying, hey, vitamin D is really something that can help strengthen the immune system and at least give it the weapon that it can use to fight against the infection,
And since a lot of people that have post-COVID also have inflammation, you want to make sure you ask for your CRP, your C-reactive protein, to be tested. And just to know that both of these things are relatively easy now to manage. So with vitamin D, you can get a little bit more sunshine, and you can also take vitamin D pills. And if someone has high inflammation, there are compounds you can ingest now that are over-the-counter compounds at your health food store, or for a company like Boomers Forever Young, where you can get superoxide dismutase, you can get trimethylglycine, vitamin A, C, and E that will help reduce your inflammation.
Yeah.
So it's good to know what your number is. So if you need to reduce it, you can talk to people like us that we can help you take care of that.
Right, and the thing about the vitamin D is it does so much more than what people realize, and I believe it isn't an essential nutrient, right?
Vitamin D?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, your body is going to make vitamin D, but only if you're exposed to sunlight.
Right.
And so in that sense, it's essential in that you need to take it by mouth, because almost no one's in the sun enough to make enough vitamin D.
Right.
So
even in Florida where we live, you could spend all day outside without a shirt on, but that's not really going to get you the level you need to make sure your immune system's healthy
not during the winter time. Even in Florida, during the winter, you wouldn't get enough sunlight. But the other test, Raleigh, that people can get, so we talked earlier about hair falling out.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's related to thyroid, and there is some evidence that COVID itself has damaged people's thyroids.
Really?
And so you want to make sure you get a complete thyroid analysis,
Okay.
right? That includes reverse T3. So you want to make sure it tests for TSH, T3, T4,
TSH,
TSH, T3, T4,
okay,
and free T3, free T4, and reverse T3. And so that's a complete thyroid panel.
Okay.
And you want to make sure you get that, because it's so important that you don't want to just get a half a panel and then say, oh, well, my thyroid is okay. Because it might not be, but you just don't know if you don't get the full panel.
Right. You get a full panel, see the full story. Right.
Yes. And then another thing is, since many people are experiencing fatigue, you want to also get your adrenals checked, because you can get adrenal fatigue, and you can have your adrenals go out of balance. So, for example, people need to have more cortisol during the daytime and less at night. But if that gets reversed and you don't have enough cortisol during the day, you're going to be fatigued. Okay. Now, on the other hand, if you're under tremendous stress, you're going to have too much cortisol.
Right.
And too much cortisol can lead to all different kinds of problems. Right?
Yeah.
And so you want to make sure you have your adrenal stress index done.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. So it's
yeah.
called the adrenal stress index.
Yeah. And so it's either done with dried urine or with saliva.
Okay.
They'll give you test tubes, little tubes to spit into 4 times throughout a 24-hour period.
Okay.
And that way you can see the rhythm of your adrenal hormones.
Nice.
But then also you want to do a complete hormone profile, meaning either a male profile or a female profile.
Okay.
And this is going to measure everything from the top, starting with pregnenolone and going down on one side with, your cortisol levels, and then on the other side with your andro, DHEA, testosterone, free testosterone, estrogen, etc. Right?
Okay.
And the reason you want that is you can also be very fatigued if you are very high in cortisol, very low in testosterone will create the fatigue.
Mm-hmm.
And so you want to know what those numbers are, because there are many different things you can do to make corrections if you have issues in that complete profile as well.
Okay.
And also the doctors that are going to look at these things, each of the glands that are secreting these hormones give feedback to the other ones.
Okay.
And that's why you want to get all 3 of these panels, because if you look at the complete picture and you see, oh, we got this going on here, that might explain this, and now if we tweak this, it'll help this plus this.
So bottom line is, when you're doing this, make sure to get the complete story so you know what may be, because they're basically working, these levels are working off of each other.
Yeah, if you don't get the complete profiles, you're going to be making a calculated guess. If you have the complete profiles, you won't be making a calculated guess. You'll actually know the real story.
Right. And so we're talking about fatigue. So these are some of the reasons why fatigue would linger. And then another thing you would just want to do is make sure that you're taking something that gives you the foundational nutrition that you would need to make energy through the Krebs cycle, right? So when you create energy, your body uses the Krebs cycle. We talked about that in a podcast called Increasing Energy the Natural Way. If you didn't see it, check it out. But the Krebs cycle requires specific nutrients. And so by not having them, especially when you're sick and feeling like this, you're not going to be able to overcome the COVID long hauler at all. Yeah. So that's, I think, something that everybody should really pay attention to just in general, whether or not you have COVID or not. Give your body what it needs to not have energy. But remember, we talk about create energy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you need certain B vitamins. You need coenzyme Q10 in order to produce the molecule of energy. And you have to take it in specific ratios, and you have to make sure it's comprehensive.
Right. That molecule of energy you talk about is ATP.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So the other thing that's really valuable with taking that comprehensive nutrition is it's also going to help with your absorption of nutrients.
Right.
So if your absorption is compromised, and there is some evidence that COVID itself had negative effect on multiple different organs and systems.
Yeah.
And so you want to be able to totally restore your body after this assault. Right? So if people had COVID and they had to be hospitalized, or even if they didn't, they were home for 2 or 3 weeks lying in bed, you become very weak. You might become depressed as a result.
Right.
And you need to be able to stimulate your body to jumpstart its protein manufacturing aspect.
Right. We're, like you said before, we're protein making machines. Exactly. And so sometimes the machine needs a jump start.
Yeah. And in order to make those proteins, your body needs to have the right amino acids, and it needs to have metabolic enzymes available that acts like glue to put those amino acids together into proteins.
Okay.
And then that will help to rebuild your body and all of your tissues with these 100,000 different proteins that the human body makes. You'll be able to make enough of them. And then as you start to feel better by gaining energy, by making more ATP and rebuilding your body, that's when you want to be going back out to exercise.
Right.
And get back into your exercise routine.
And at that point, real quick about what you were saying was interesting about the amino acids. So the amino acids are the building blocks, but you have to have the metabolites, which actually kind of like the mortar. You got cinder blocks that are the amino acids, and then you've got the metabolites, which glue them together like a mortar. Now you were talking about
you want to have you want to have metabolic enzymes.
Yes.
To be able to do that, right? But the metabolites also come into play where when you're going through the whole sequence of stimulating the human genome to express the code it has for making these proteins, you need the metabolites for that expression.
Right.
And quite often, if you are eating a really good diet and you also are taking supplements that are things like sprouted barley seeds, or you're taking things like ashwagandha, they actually have polyphenols in them that are going to stimulate your bacterial DNA to make metabolites, which are going to stimulate your human genome to make more metabolites, which are also going to end up making things like your neurochemistry. So serotonin ultimately is made from that process, which is what makes you be able to get up in the morning. This combination of serotonin and cortisol gives you enough energy to actually get out of bed. And some people that don't make enough serotonin literally cannot get out of bed. And the same thing with adrenal fatigue. So, and the post-COVID syndrome is a causative for this.
Right.
And so you don't have to understand the entirety of it, but it's good to understand enough so that you know the right supplements to get that will help you to reestablish your equilibrium and begin to live your life again.
Now, I'm glad you ended there, because what we were getting to is that as you're starting to feel better and maybe you're getting your energy back, you want to start going out and exercising, right? You want to get out and start working those muscles that you kind of let go for a couple weeks or whatever it was. And so at that point, when you start going out, another thing to pay attention to is your immune health. Right. So that way you don't get reinfected or whatever the case may be. Keep your immune health strong. So if some other attacker comes, you can fight that off, So that's another thing that as you start to exercise, we pay attention to. And there's some good ways that you can kind of help stimulate your immune system. A really easy way we have a video on is lymph drainage, Bob, right? I mean,
exactly. Yeah, your lymph system is moving toxins out of your body, one of the many, many things that it does, but moving toxins out of your body and, intercellular, toxins and trash that need to be moved out is being collected by your lymph system and then processed through your liver and then out of your body, these toxins. And so you can actually speed up the process of your lymph by learning how to do manual lymph drainage. And so we have a whole video on that's on our YouTube channel that can help teach people how to do that for themselves and for their family.
Yeah, just check out YouTube. It's Boomers Forever Young on YouTube. And one of our most popular videos is the lymph drainage video that you did. It's got some really good, easy to do techniques. Most of the time you can do it by yourself. Sometimes you might need a friend to help you reach certain spots, but for the most part, it's a really good way to easily kind of get your immune system back because you're getting those toxins out. And then another thing that we have that's pretty unique is called lignans. Now, lignans are actually the outer hulls of flax seeds.
Right. Yeah, so the lignans are polyphenols, which are plant compounds. And they're in different things, but what we know is that in the outside wax of the flaxseed is highly concentration of lignans. And so we have a scientist that has a machine that he can take many, many seeds, the flax seeds, and tumble them in a machine and knock the wax off the outside of the seed.
Right.
And then grind it up into a fine powder and stabilize the nutrients in it. And then he sends us that powder, which people can mix in a glass of water and drink it. And lignans are good for many, many different things.
Right. I was going to mention that, yeah.
And one of the main things it does, it helps to boost your immune system.
Right.
And so people can get a small jar of these lignans with a small scoop in a glass of water just once a day. You can boost your immune system quite dramatically.
And I wanted to mention, since we were talking about it earlier with the hormone imbalance, lignans are great for people with hormone imbalance issues, like women who might be going through menopause or have issues with their monthly period. It helps to regulate that. A lot of men with prostate issues have really good luck with lignans because it helps those hormones that do that.
So there's 27 different lignans in the flaxseed.
Right. Okay.
And in that hull, the outside wax.
Yeah.
And so that's why they can do so many different things. But when you take them in, you want to also make sure you have good probiotics, because lignans are plant lignans when you take them in, but they have to be converted in your gut to mammalian lignans, and it's done with the help of bacteria.
Right.
And so then those mammalian lignans then act back on the DNA of different bacteria, which then acts on the DNA of the human genome. So this is that genetic expression that's caused by things you eat.
Right.
And lignans are very powerful activators of genetic expression, including upregulating your immune system.
That's good. And, one of the really good things that I don't think a lot of people know is that they're also a really powerful antioxidant. They have an antioxidant, it's hard to pronounce, it's called psychosalicylarian diglucoside, which is pretty long. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, I practiced it.
Yeah.
SDG for short. But that particular antioxidant is very helpful in those tissues, in those areas.
It's a very high auric value of over 100,000, and so it's very good anti-inflammatory while it's helping your immune system.
Right, and inflammation is the key to a lot of issues. So with that type of an auric value and the ability to, like you said, act on the hormones with the mammalian or the plant lignans to mammalian lignans to conversion, it's quite a unique thing. And so that kind of like brings us to, as you kind of start going out, exercising again, there's probably a sense of anxiety that would come with going back out. If
re-entering the society.
Re-entering society, kind of like coming back from war. There's like this PTSD feeling and this ability to kind of get back to normal. And for a lot of people, there's anxiety and apprehensiveness about this. So, what we do about that, right?
Yeah. So we've done a whole show on anxiety, podcast on that, which people should listen to.
It's called Managing Stress and Anxiety During Trying Times. It was kind of almost like the precursor to this one, but now we're looking a little bit later, we're seeing the effects long term. So now
So, but just as a little bit of a synopsis, ashwagandha, a centuries-old Ayurvedic remedy, is really good for helping manage anxiety. And another thing that we've talked about before in the other podcast is using a device called Inner Balance.
Yes.
So Inner Balance is a very clever device invented by the Heart Math Institute, and they have a website, heartmath.com. It's like your beating heart and the subject math, heartmath.com.
Yep.
And the device clips onto your ear and has a transponder that communicates to an app on your cell phone.
Yep.
And you can use this device to sync your breath into a very rhythmic state, and you can also reset the whole process in your brain that decides whether or not things are okay, or if you need to be under stress.
Right.
And so right now, Raleigh, because of the global pandemic, people are of the belief that things are not okay.
Right.
Now, even before the pandemic, the science showed that in the United States, people were of the belief that things were okay only about 5% of the time. And 95% of the time, they had background anxiety, and because of the belief something's not right here. Right? And Inner Balance allows you to begin to change that.
Right.
It's an intricate metabolic pathway involving your prefrontal cortex, the neurites in your heart muscle, and your amygdala, part of your brain. And this feedback loop can either keep you stuck in the loop that says everything's not okay, or you can begin to mitigate it and reframe it and switch it to where your body now begins to relax and once again, things seem to be okay.
Right.
So a very powerful device that works really, really well, and it works really quickly. It
Yeah.
can work almost instantly.
I've talked about it on other podcasts, but it's something that can really quickly sharpen your ability to do this, which, as you're recovering from something like COVID, time is of the essence. The quicker you can start to get control of it, the better you'll feel. And, that's really interesting because a lot of the times people probably wouldn't think of that causing so many problems, but you said it before. You could take all the nutritional supplements in the world, but if your body's under stress, specifically, anxiety and things like that, it won't respond because it's got a flood of all these anxiety-causing hormones. And so using things like natural remedies like the inner balance, one thing we always talk about is tapping.
Yep.
That's kind of similar to inner balance, just in a different way.
Right. So with tapping is using your meridian system to help to reframe beliefs that you have in your brain. And this is one that's really important for now with this topic because people are talking about the new normal. We have to accept the new normal.
Right.
Or perhaps at best, getting back to normal.
Right. Getting back to normal, accepting the new normal. But what do we want to do, Bob?
Right. And so really there's an opportunity here because people have just been through some trying times, maybe still going through trying times. But, there's a saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Right.
Okay? Now, so people say, your soul and your character is forged in fire, right? So we can choose if we want to make sure that this trying time we've all been through helps to make us even better than we were before.
Exactly.
And you can begin to prepare your body and mind for that eventuality using tapping.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now, this is never to deny the fact that people have died and that there is mourning going on with grief, maybe anger, et cetera, et cetera. And it's not diminishing the value of the life of anyone who died, but quite often people will say, all right, well, your loved one who has passed away, what do you think they would want you to be doing?
Right.
Constantly mourning and retreating into yourself, or would they want you to get on with your life? Okay. And the answer is always, get on with your life, of course. And so this technique can help people to get on with their life. And I'll give an example of how you can actually use it.
Yeah.
And so the tapping is tapping on your fingertips on the side of your nails, right? And so as you tap, you're activating your meridians and you can repeat some phrases that will help you with this concept of the new normal.
Right.
And so you would repeat something like this. Even though up until now, I thought that I had to be of the belief that things weren't okay and that I might have to accept a new normal, I completely love and accept myself anyway. And I'm so grateful now that I realize that the new normal can actually be better, not worse. And that I can get on with my life, have joyful anticipation of a wonderful future, and feel at complete peace. Right? When you're done, cross your hands over your heart and push gently in. Take in a deep breath, let your hands down, and breathe out while your chin drops down. This will help to make you feel peaceful, which will reinforce the affirmation you made about feeling at complete peace. You've created a paired association between the feeling and the words.
Right.
It's much stronger.
Yeah, the ability to follow the thought up with a peaceful feeling is almost like when we talk about celebrating something. You have that release and that ability to say this is a good thing, and it helps you to take that belief of things not being okay and reinsert a new one that says not only can things be okay, but they can be better.
They can be better. Right. And you can, between using tapping and inner balance and some ashwagandha, you can actually begin to progress toward a place where you'll be the type of person where you're going to be of the belief that everything is okay almost all the time, unless there's a true emergency that has to be tended to.
Right.
And but also, Rollie, we have videos on how to do the tapping technique that actually includes some special videos for tapping for stress.
Yep.
And tapping for the immune system.
All of that is on actually our YouTube channel.
And also the whole basic idea of how to do it. It's on the YouTube channel, which will be in the links below.
We'll put important links there, and you'll be able to find playlists. The playlist is actually helpful videos, and that you can find right alongside of the playlist for Live Forever Young Radio on YouTube. Boomers Forever Young YouTube. Search that. Yep. You'll be able to find us.
And the helpful videos playlist has the lymph drainage video,
right.
And it also has a video called the Ultimate Mind Calming Exercise.
Don't forget that.
And the tapping videos have their own playlist called EFT, the Emotional Freedom Technique.
Correct. Yep, and you guys can find that again. We'll put links up to it on Live Forever Young Radio, Boomers Forever Young YouTube. We'll also put some links out on Facebook. Boomer Wellness Network is our Facebook, so don't forget to go there. Go ahead and check us out, follow us, whatever you need to do, because really, in the end, it's about how to stay healthy, and everybody's gotten through something, whether or not you're directly or indirectly affected by, COVID. And, all you really need to do is look for support.
Yeah.
And we'll be here to try to give you as much help as we can.
And Rollie, why don't you give them our phone number too, so if you want to call for some support.
Of course. We do have people that can answer questions. 1-800-861-4609. They'll be able to help you out, go over some of the issues that we talked about today. And as far as being able to point you in the right direction for what you can do nutritionally, of course, with something like this, like we talked about, go to your doctor, get your tests, see where you're at, get a baseline, see what he says. But, we're all in it together,
Very well. So, Rollie, thanks for being on the show.
Yes.
For everybody today.
Of course.
And we will see everybody else on the next show. Thanks for watching and listening to Live Forever Young Radio. And have a great day.
See you on the next one, guys. Thanks for listening to Live Forever Young Radio. Check us out at liveforeveryoungradio.com.